Welcome to the world of CompuTutor. I'm Brent Seltzer. I congratulate you on the purchase of your new Apple IIe microcomputer. It's an investment into your future that's going to pay for itself just as quickly as you learn to operate it. There are really only a couple of tough things to deal with when learning to use a microcomputer. The first is getting it from the store to your home or office. Isn't it amazing how all these miniaturized high-technology components always seem to come in a box that's just a little longer than the reach of your arms and just a little higher than the trunk of your car? However, you have now passed that first hurdle, and from here on it does get easier. If you're concerned that you're going to have to spend hours and hours of time learning computer technology theory just to operate your machine, relax. The object of this CompuTutor program is to teach you the basics of using your machine, not the basics of building it. Because trial and error is still the most effective method of education, this CompuTutor program is designed for you to play as often as you need to, so that you can see any segment or specific operation of using your machine again and again until you're comfortable with the procedure. Now, we recommend that you first watch this tape all the way through one time without trying to use your machine. That'll give you an opportunity to see what you'll be learning and what you'll require in the way of backup materials. Then you should set up your computer, even if only temporarily, in the same room with your video cassette machine and television, so that you can watch and participate on your machine at the same time. So, let's begin. Just imagine that by some good fortune, you're now the proud owner of the local library in your town, and all the librarians work for you, bringing you any and all of the information stored in the thousands of books on the shelves, and delivering that information in whatever kind of order or format you ask for. Now imagine that same library building and its team of librarians compressed to the size of the machine you just bought. Because like that library building, your computer can be filled with large amounts of information, and instead of waiting hours, days, and sometimes weeks for the information, it takes only minutes. And that's just what your computer is all about, the high-speed storage and retrieval of information. You might find it interesting to note that your microcomputer represents the sum total of over 150 years of research and development. That's true, over 150 years. See, back in 1834, a British mathematician named Charles Babbage invented a mechanical device that would eventually give birth to the first design of the first analytical computer. The machine he built was designed to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. However, this sort of Rube Goldberg contraption had a little trouble with the multiplying and dividing because it was made of all moving parts that had to be precision made. So the first model tended to shake so hard during the multiplication and division process that it nearly fell off the table. A lot of years and a lot of effort went into making a more refined version of the computer. And along with that, by World War II, the engineers at Sperry Rand had developed an electric card sorting device that seemed to help. From that warehouse full of parts came an even more refined version that in the late 1950s could sort through and cross-index hundreds of cardboard cards called punch cards. The engineers called them punch cards because they had to punch little holes in them for the mechanical sorting process. You'll find that a lot of computer terms used today were invented for verbal convenience, and I'll be telling you more about that as we go on. But giving credit where it's due, the first time Americans really had a chance to see a computer was back around 1958. And that was thanks to veteran TV host Art Linkletter. He introduced UNIVAC on his Saturday night program, People Are Funny. The great electromechanical brain UNIVAC, at least on that show, was used to match up single men with single women, all of whom were searching for ways not to be single. And so, way back in the 50s, computer dating was born. I only mention this to you in case you think that computer people have no sense of romance. Oh, not so. In fact, it was a very romantic way for a couple of movie characters played by Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn to meet in the classic film called Desk Set. From the late 50s right up to today, Hollywood has represented the computer in many different ways. From the flashing lights and spinning wheels of TV's Captain Video to the soft-spoken but black-hearted HAL 9000 of the sci-fi classic 2001, A Space Odyssey. Don't worry, your Apple IIe is a lot more user-friendly than HAL. And right up to the lovable R2-D2 of Star Wars. The computer has been growing with all of us,
And as computers grew in stature, they shrunk in size. And today, the same kind of computer that took up 2 floors of a building just to match boyfriends and girlfriends on TV is no larger or even as powerful as the computer you're about to use. You know, a wise man once said, "A thing is known by what it does." And what your computer will do for you is to store and retrieve large amounts of data in short periods of time. And the list of applications is virtually as long as your imagination is wide. Keep that in mind as you begin to discover how to use your Apple IIe microcomputer. Now, before you begin to hook up your computer, I want to talk to you just a bit about computer terminology. You remember a little earlier when I mentioned to you that getting the machine from the store to your home or office was among the more difficult aspects of using your computer? Here comes the second one, computer terminology. The inventors, designers, engineers, and builders of computers seem to have created a language of letters, numbers, and sounds that are as Greek to most of us as, say, Greek, come to think of it. For example, when you hear the term basic, you probably think of the word basic. Now, Webster's dictionary defines the word basic as meaning fundamental or essential. However, when you hear the computer term basic, it's an acronym or a word formed from the letters of a series of other words. BASIC, in computer terms, stands for Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. And this is just one of the languages that is used to create the programs you run on your computer. You see, the engineers who designed and built these micro wonders developed a kind of shorthand. They abbreviated sentences into words and words into letters. But I think after a while you'll be able to figure out a lot of these words for yourself. To show you how logically some of these terms came into existence, let's go over a few of the more common computer terms. For example, in a little bit you'll learn to boot up your machine. Now, don't panic. All that means is starting with a computer that's powerless and turning on the power, preparing it to follow your commands. That's one of my favorite things about computers. You get to command them. All right, booting up is a term taken from the old mountaineers' expression for when climbers reached the end of the rope. They would use the straps off their climbing boots to make a loop on the rope, catch their foot in it, and start climbing up the rope again. So when a computer program was written to start up the system of a computer, it took the name of the bootstrap program. When you boot up your computer, you're starting up the rope of computing. Earlier, I promised you no long technical lectures, and I'm going to keep that promise. So without putting you through a long series of diagrams, I thought you should know approximately how the computer works. Actually, it seems to work like your own brain. It has a central processing unit called the CPU, which coordinates all of the information and sends it where it should go. The information in a computer is stored in its memory, and that's like your memory. The computer has 2 kinds of memory. The first is called read-only memory, or ROM. Read-only memory is built into the machine, usually at the factory, and it's usually permanent, forever. It tells the machine how to be a machine. Well, you have ROM too. When you were born, you didn't have any real conscious memory or experience, but you knew how to breathe, to make your heart pump, your eyes work, fingers and toes move, and of course, keep the diaper service busy. That was your survival memory. Well, in a sense, that's what ROM is all about. Next comes random access memory, or RAM. That's the part of the machine's memory that is accessible to all the information or experiences you put into it. It's like all the experiences you remember since birth, or at least slightly thereafter. In the computer, RAM is the same thing. It's memory of what information you put in the machine on a day-to-day basis. I wanted to show you how the terms get created and the language of computerese is born. However, you don't need to use computerese to use a computer any more than you need to know how to strip a carburetor, flush a cooling system, or change the points and plugs of a car just to drive it. You learned how to boot up or turn on your hi-fi, and you figured out how to store or record movies or TV shows on the RAM of your videotape machine. So learning a few of these computer terms won't be that difficult. The best way to use this CompuTutor program is to stop the machine and rewind it to any point and play it as many times as you want, allowing you to learn at your own pace. I'll be right here for you, until you put me back in the box. In the next segment, you'll be setting up your machine. So take a minute and think about where to put it. You should put the machine somewhere that's convenient and comfortable.
place where you have plenty of light and electrical outlets. The grounded kind with the 3 holes for the 3-prong plugs that come with the equipment. Also, pick a place that makes it easy for you to look directly at the monitor screen. And put it at a height that's good for your hands. You don't want to get wrung out wrists after a short shot at the keyboard. By the way, you should know that extreme heat or cold is not fun for your computer. Although the fine folks at Apple tell us that temperatures above 115 degrees can cause your machine to crash, not on the floor, that's just a slang term for any time your machine stops operating properly, others tell us that 90 degrees is the limit. And what it all means is it could cost you all the time and effort you've put into working on a particular program. The result is that you could lose whatever current material is in the machine's random access memory at that time. Now, temperatures below 30 degrees according to Apple and 60 degrees according to others, and your computer may be too cold to start, like a car on a winter day. Even if it does start, it could be very sluggish. So try to avoid putting your computer near hot air ducts, radiators, direct sunlight, and, of course, moving glaciers. You should consider another thing called power spikes. You know that AC, or alternating current, comes through the electrical outlets in your home and office, and it does alternate. And sometimes when the power goes up or down all of a sudden, which happens nearly every day, it could affect your computer. So the next time you go to the computer store, ask about a surge box. It plugs into the wall, your computer plugs into it, and that should prevent those power spikes from causing any problems. Something else to consider. Whether you own your own home or rent, better call your insurance agent and make sure your insurance policy covers your computer. In most cases, your current insurance won't cover it. Last thing before we move on, save all those cartons and packing materials your Apple IIe came packed in, just in case you discover a defect or problem with the machine in the next week or so. You'll find it a lot easier to take back in the box, easier to carry, and easier to get replaced. And don't forget to fill out all of those warranty cards and send them in to Apple. At the beginning of our program, I congratulated you for getting your Apple IIe. Now I congratulate you for sitting through this little orientation. Coming up, we'll be assembling the equipment and getting ready to use your machine. So you might want to stop the tape here and review this segment, and then probably find a place to put the machine. Maybe even take a quick break before moving on. Don't worry about me. Told my mom I'd be home late. Welcome back to CompuTutor. Did segment 1 whet your appetite? Good, because at the end of this segment, we'll order out. In this segment, you'll be taking a tour of your machine and then assembling the equipment in preparation to use it. There are a few things you should have standing by. Some diskettes, usually a box of 10 is a good start, and don't forget paper and ribbons for your printer. Maybe even some cleaning supplies for later, like a bottle of anti-static and a disk drive cleaning kit. If the salesman at the store didn't sell you these things, you might want to give him another chance. Now, it would be very handy to keep your owner's manual that came with the machine nearby, because I'll be referring you to that from time to time. All right, let's get down to business. You may have already removed your computer from its packing carton and have it completely assembled. Or maybe the salesman at the store assembled it for you. Even so, it might be a good idea to stay with this part of our program. It'll give you a chance to make sure you have all the information down pat. Hey, look at all this stuff. You know, you could read any one of billions and billions of different technical books about the internal workings of a computer. However, there is a much simpler way to approach this information. Imagine the inside of a computer being much like the inside of a human body. At the head of the computer is the central processing unit, the CPU. It's the real brain of the computer. It directs all of the information in and out of the main memory, where all the read-only memory, ROM, and the random access memory, RAM, is stored. The power pack inside the computer is like the heart of the body, pumping power like blood in appropriate amounts to all elements of the computer. To learn more about it, check the owner's manual description that starts on page 45. It explains in more technical detail the inner workings of your machine. Now here comes some of those computer terms. Hardware and software, what are they? What's the difference? Well, hardware refers to the machine and its peripherals. A peripheral is anything that plugs into the computer, like the disk drives, or the printer, or the screen. They're all pretty hard, so they're called hardware. Software is the reference to the programs you run on your computer, which come on these diskettes called floppy disks. We call them floppy disks because, well, they're kind of floppy. I'll be talking more about this a little later on in our program. I think the easiest way to relate to the difference between the two, hardware and software, is your own videotape machine. The cassette machine itself with the tuner timer, that's the hardware. The actual video cassettes that you put in the machine, well, that's like the floppy diskette that holds the software. And the movies or TV shows that you record on the cassette, that's like the program instructions that we call software. Right now, let's put our attention on the hardware. The biggest thing you'll notice is the television screen, or the monitor. You can call it either one. And then, of course, there's that favorite technical term, the CRT. That stands for cathode ray tube. In fact, that happens to be the name of every television picture tube. But don't go looking for the Late Show on your Apple IIe. In a way, the CRT is really like the mouth of the computer. When the machine or the program that's in it wants to communicate with you, it does all of its talking right up here on the screen. Sometimes it may even beep at you. Down here, that's the keyboard, sometimes called the keypad. It looks just like a typewriter keyboard because it is just like a typewriter keyboard. You'll notice that most of the keys look like a typewriter keyboard, and there are others that don't. In a little while, we'll tour that keyboard and show you what all those keys are for. You'll speak to your computer or the program it's running through the keyboard. That's how it hears you giving it commands. Don't bother talking to it. You'll have to press the keys to get your message across. Here are the disk drives. They're kind of like little record players that record as well, so you can store information and bring it out again and again. It's in these little disk drives that the floppy disks do their business. In fact, you could think of these little disk drives as filing rooms and the floppy disks as the file cabinets, and the material you store on the floppy diskette as the actual file.
Now, because you won't be able to pass through the television screen and sit here at the machine to get the hands-on experience, I want you to meet my assistant, Das Mitz. Don't do that. Here on the videotape, he'll be playing your part. Of course, you'll appear live in your own home version. By watching our friend, you'll be able to see what he's doing, which is what you should be doing. Okay? Now, let's get all this equipment assembled so that it'll look like this, because right now, it probably looks like this. If for any reason you've put your monitor on top of your computer, do what we've done, remove it. Because before you can connect the equipment, you must remove the cover. So using both hands, grasp the tabs that project from the back of the computer cover. Pull up firmly until the corner fasteners pop. That's it. Slide the cover back away from the keyboard until you can lift it up and off. Now gently set the cover aside. Good. Looks impressive, doesn't it? Looks kind of empty, too. Well, this is where the guts of your machine are located, and this is where you can add components to expand the capabilities of your machine. Because your disk drives came in separate boxes, you'll have to do that installation yourself, and so we'll put our concentration on that. You can add up to 4 disk drives on this machine, but most folks only use 1 or 2. First, pop out as many of these plastic inserts as you have cable to feed through in the back. Just as we pop this one out over here. Just press down on this tab on the top and push toward the back. That's it. Depending upon the number of disk drives you have, feed the cables through the back panel openings. Drive number 1 through opening number 1. And drive number 2, if you have it, through opening number 2. Now, attach the cable from the first drive to the drive 1 pins on that disk controller card. Now repeat the process for drive 2. And don't forget to affix drive labels to the actual disk drives themselves. Make sure you have enough cable so that nothing pulls tight when attaching the pins to the cards.
Now install the card in the disk controller slot. That's slot number 6, one down from the back right area. Using your thumb and your forefinger on the top edges of the card, gently rock it back and forth until you can firmly push it in and get it seated. Good.
When you stack your drives, make sure the number 1 drive is on the bottom. Apple gives you drive number labels. We've used larger labels to make it easier to see the numbers. If for any reason your dealer didn't hook up your 80-column card, that's the card that allows you to run software requiring a screen display of 80 characters across, as opposed to the 40 characters across we'll be showing you. Here's what you do.
Your 80-column card will go in this slot, marked Auxiliary Connector. So using the same procedure as you did with the last card, take your thumb and forefinger on the top edge and just rock the card gently back and forth to get it started. Then press down firmly until the card is fully seated here in the slot marked Auxiliary. Good. While we're at it, why not install your printer card in patch cord? First, you'll need to choose a slot to allow the patch cord to enter through. We've chosen slot number 7. Notice how it attaches to the printer card in much the same way the disk drives attach to the disk drive controller card. Now use that same procedure as you did with the other 2 cards. Install it in slot number 1. Rock it very gently and then press it in firmly until it's seated. Very good. Now we'll attach the printer. For purposes of this demonstration, I'll just put it here next to the machine. Now, take the other end of the printer patch cord and attach it to the back of the printer, lining up the D-shaped connector with the D-shaped receiver in the back of the printer. Go ahead.
Very good. Now let's put the cover back on the computer by placing it a little back from its closed position. Then slide the cover toward the keyboard until the lip of the cover is partway in the case. Push down on the back corners until the fasteners pop shut on both sides. All right. Now get the power cord. Plug it in the back right side near the off-on switch. It goes from the back right-hand corner over here and into the grounded or 3-hole wall outlet or surge box, and you're all hooked up. Now we'll hook up the monitor or the CRT, which is easy to do. First, put the monitor on top of the computer. Now take the video cable and connect one end to the video output jack on the back of your Apple. You see the little picture of the little TV over the jack? Connect the other end to the video input on the monitor, where it says Video In. Well, you've done a great job putting your machine together. If you're not sure that you remembered to place the disk drive controller card in slot 6, the printer card in slot 1, or the 80-column card in the auxiliary connector slot, and the power plug in the proper connection in the back of the machine near the off-on switch, then perhaps you should rerun this segment of CompuTutor one more time to make sure. Or you might want to read through pages 12 through 23 of your Apple owner's manual regarding assembly, especially page 20, which shows the connection of these nut plates in the back of the machine where the disk drive controller patch cords go in and out. Otherwise, why not take a break before we boot up and learn the general machine operation? If you like, you can head out to the kitchen for a bite to eat. I wouldn't mind that myself before we go into the next segment of CompuTutor. Welcome back to CompuTutor. In our last segment, you really put it all together, equipment-wise, and now it's time to boot up and go to work, because now you're ready to turn on your machine. First, turn on the monitor switch to allow the CRT to warm up, right over here. Now reach around to the back left side of the computer and switch on the on-off switch. Whoops, I know it's a little hard to find, but there it is. You'll hear a beep
and you'll hear the lower or number 1 disk drive whirring. The little red light will be on and the words Apple II will appear at the top of the screen. Stop the disk drive by holding down the control button on the left and then press the reset button in the upper right corner. When you let go of the keys, the disk drive stops. The red light on the drive goes out and the screen loses the Apple II signature at the top, replacing it with a prompt, the little bracket-like thing on the left and the cursor at the bottom. By the way, you can adjust the contrast of the monitor by adjusting the control near the monitor off-on switch. If these things didn't happen, turn off your machine, wait 30 seconds, and repeat the sequence. If it still doesn't work, call the dealer. You may need help from the service department. Notice this flashing block? It's called the cursor. That's a pointer, and it's used to point to what comes next, or where the next character will appear. You're ready to start learning your keyboard. As we mentioned earlier, it looks like a typewriter keyboard that has a bunch of extra keys. Now, just type in your name to get the feel of the keyboard. Type it in as though you're using a regular typewriter. Kind of fun, isn't it? Now, here's another exercise. Press a letter key, any key, and hold it down. F is a good key. See how the machine keeps printing out that letter? Well, the longer you hold any character, letter, or number key down, the longer it continues to print on the screen. Now, try using the right and left arrow keys. They're down in the right-hand corner of the keyboard, and see what happens. The longer you hold down the arrow keys, the more the cursor keeps moving. You see, using the left and right arrow keys allows you to move the cursor right through a word without erasing anything. And this is very handy for setting up and making corrections. I'll explain the up and down arrow keys to you in just a moment. If you use the arrow keys to position the cursor somewhere in the middle of all those F's you just typed, you can erase the characters to the right just by pressing down on the space bar. The longer you press it down, the more spaces it erases. When there are no characters to erase, the space bar just moves the cursor to the right. I'd like to pass on a few words to you on the subject of mistakes and errors. Don't be afraid or embarrassed to make them. Your computer won't breathe a word to a soul. You see, getting used to using a computer requires you to make a certain amount of errors. The machine is very specific about things like which letters, numbers, or symbols you should use. For example, on a typewriter, you could use a small L for the number 1, and it would look the same. But to a computer, a small L is only a small L, and the number 1 is only the number 1. When you make mistakes, the computer will tell you with an error message. It will give you the error message with either a series of numbers or words, noting specifically what the error was all about. They're referred to as the error codes. To see what an error message looks like, go ahead and press your return key. Good. That's a syntax error. In your Apple Owner's Manual on page 68, you'll find a list of those error codes. What we'll do here is give you a rundown of what all the keys do. Then we'll add some software in the next segment and let you see some examples. First, I'm going to show you where things are on the keyboard so that when we put a diskette in with a program in the machine, you'll be able to boot up and know where to put your fingers when the instructions are given. Press down on each key as we talk about it. However, until a program is in the machine, don't expect to get the kinds of results I'll be talking about right now. See how the letters and numbers of a traditional typewriter keyboard are right in place? Well, here you'll notice on the left a column of keys. Now, starting at the top is the escape key. It's used to allow you to escape from certain functions of a program or sometimes the whole program. Under that is the tab key, just like the tab key of your typewriter. And below that is the control key. When pressed in conjunction with other keys, it commands the program to perform very intricate functions with just a few strokes of a few keys. If you look under the control key, there's the shift key, just like on your typewriter. And below the shift key is the caps lock key, which does the same thing your caps lock key does on your typewriter.
keeps the printing in uppercase. Over on the other side of your keyboard are some other important keys. At the top is the delete key, and it's used to remove certain material you're working with. Just a couple of keys below that is the return key, like the return key on an electric typewriter. It brings the cursor to the beginning of the next line. Now, I want you to notice the keys on the lowest level where the space bar is. Those 4 keys on the far right are the arrow keys, and in many programs, they move the cursor around the screen in whatever direction the arrow is pointing. Let's assume for a moment you misspelled a word and wanted to change a letter. Now, I know it's not likely that you might have misspelled your name, and yet some folks do. So try experimenting with the left and right arrow keys. When you find the area for correction, just type over it. Very good. By the way, that left arrow key is sometimes referred to as the backspace key. Did you notice the 2 Apple keys on either side of the space bar? They're called Open Apple and Solid Apple, and they're function keys. When used in a combination with other keys, they perform big functions with little keystrokes. The last thing I want you to notice here on the keyboard is in the upper right corner. It's the reset key. And when you press the control key, hold it down, then press the Open Apple key and hold it down, and then press the reset key, you'll cause the machine to boot up again without having to turn the power on and off. Now let's talk about disk drives. They hold the software, data, and programs that you'll be moving in and out of your machine. In case you're not sure what programs are, they're like instructions that tell the machine what to do. Oh, make sure you never open a drive and try and take a diskette out while the red light is on, or while the diskette is moving inside. You'll damage the diskette. You won't do the drive a whole lot of good either. Before you boot up, I think you should know what a disk operating system is all about. A disk operating system, or DOS, which rhymes with toss, is like an office manager who takes responsibility for seeing to it that certain files are kept, stored, and used in a certain way. The office manager gives the other clerical people in the office all the policies and directions on how to handle the work so it coordinates with your needs. Well, that's what your disk operating system does. Just as you direct your office manager to use certain uniform commands to the office staff that keep control over how the work is done, the DOS is a collection of programs that give special commands to the machine and your programs to ensure the material you want is where you want it and the way you want it. When you put the DOS in the machine and boot up, the cursor will come up next to a prompt. That's a little bracket-like thing on the left, like a prompter in a high school play who tells you that you're on or what's next. The prompt is asking for a command. It may be asking for some additional information first. In the next segment, I'll be telling you to boot up your machine with your disk operating system in the drive, and we'll get started with some hands-on usage. Hey, just for fun, let's take a look inside a diskette. I'm going to open this up, which is very difficult to do because they're very well sealed. They're meant to be that way. Actually, I need a little help to... Oh, son of a gun. As you can see, it's just a little record in a little record jacket. Only you leave it in the jacket. Don't you do this because you won't be able to use the diskette again. In fact, you must make a point of not touching the diskette in any of these exposed locations. And when you're holding a diskette, be gentle. It'll be better for both you and the diskette if you hold it lightly on the outside edges. It won't be in danger of being damaged, and you won't be in danger of having to buy another one to replace it. See, I can just put this on my expense account, in case I ever get one. As you can see, just a little record in a little paper sleeve. Notice how the sleeve has an oblong hole cut here at the bottom? Well, when the diskette is in the drive and spinning around, the drive reads the material off the diskette from here and moves it into the system and the central processing unit. This is also the place the system writes material onto the disk. Also notice this little notch here on the paper sleeve. If you cover this notch with the little sticker tabs that come with the diskettes, here I've got one, I'll show you. Here's a little sticker tab. See, if you kind of cover it with that, it prevents the diskette from being erased accidentally. Much the same way those little tabs in the back of your audio cassettes are taken out to prevent you from accidentally recording over them.
You can remove the tab if you ever decide to use that diskette for something else later. So if you already have something on the diskette you don't want to lose, use the sticker to protect it. Also, label it accordingly. The labels come in the box with the diskettes. On the subject of labeling your diskettes, unless you're intending to first type or write the labels before you put them on the diskette, you should always use a felt tip pen to do your labeling. That way you won't take a chance of damaging the diskette by pressing too hard on the surface. Your label should consist of the name you want to call the diskette, the program you're working with, and the date you started the diskette. In a little while, you'll be backing up or copying diskettes, and you'll have a chance to see it all working. Backing up or copying diskettes is very important. You see, a floppy disk has only a 40-hour life expectancy. Now, that just means that when you read and write a diskette on the machine, the process takes only a few seconds. And when you divide that into the diskette's life expectancy, 40 hours could last you a very long time. But floppies can be fragile, and anything can get misplaced or mishandled. So making backup copies is like having carbon copies, or more accurately, duplicate originals. We suggest that you make 2 backups of every disk you have. One of them is for general use, and the other one is to be called a fire copy. That fire copy is the one you might want to store in a fireproof location, like a safe deposit box, or some sort of fireproof box in a safe location away from the machine. Now, before we end this segment, I've got some new terms for you. Bit and byte. A bit is an acronym for a binary digit, B-I-T. 8 of these little bits make a byte, B-Y-T-E. And a byte is equal to 1 character. So if you have 100 bytes, you have 100 characters. But with computers, even a blank space takes a byte. Computers only have a certain number of bytes available, and you don't want to waste space. Almost all the computers you'll see offer space in thousands of bytes, or kilobytes. That's the metric measurement of 1,000 bytes. The number of bytes available in your random access memory, or main memory, RAM, tells you just how much material you can put into the machine's memory. If your machine has 64K, that means you have 64 kilobytes. If you want to take that a step further, try this. If you were to fill a page of text, like a letter or a report, you would be able to put about 2,000 bytes, or characters, or 2K on a page. So that means a machine with 64K RAM, random access memory, could hold about 32 to 34 pages of text in the machine before you had to store it. Of course, some of that space might be used by the program that helped you type in the text. And that brings us to storage. Very important. You see, the memory is like a blackboard that is only so big, right? So when you fill it up, you either have to store it away and then bring out another blackboard, like a floppy disk, or you just have to erase it all and start again. Well, that's pretty blank. Storing the blackboard is done by commanding the machine to save the material in the memory on a diskette, which you'll learn to do in just a little bit. A bit of time, that is. In a few minutes, we'll be booting up that DOS diskette you slipped into the #1 drive, showing you the major commands and even running a useful program. But you've been working real hard, and you should be congratulated. You know, when you bought your Apple IIe, Apple gave you 3 diskettes. We'll be using 2 of them in the next segment. We'll be using the diskette marked System Master and the diskette marked Sample Programs. There is a 3rd diskette called Apple Presents Apple. This is a disk training program that gives you some exercises to do that will reinforce your understanding of the keyboard. At this point, you would find this a very helpful and easy to run program. Take out that DOS diskette and put this diskette into the #1 drive. When you boot up, you'll have an opportunity to practice on the keyboard before we begin using the disk operating system. We recommend that you use the Apple Presents Apple diskette now before going on to the next segment. You'll find it to be a good review of the keyboard, an excellent opportunity to practice, and a lot of fun. Then, why not take a break, or review this last segment of CompuTutor. Relax before we begin using your machine in the next segment. Maybe you just want to get up, walk around. You could take a look out the window in case it's raining outside. Of course, if it's raining inside, you can skip the window.
Welcome back to CompuTutor. In our last segment, we toured the equipment, ran down the keys on the keyboard. Now, let's get started loading that DOS System Master diskette into the #1 drive of your system. That's the one you saw light up its little red light. First, make sure that the lever-like door of the drive is open. You know, it should be left open except when a diskette has been put in. Now, take that System Master diskette, and I want you to load it with the label facing up and out. That's it. Just gently slip it right in there. Oh, don't forget to close the lever-like door behind it, because if you don't close the door, the drive won't run. Now you're going to have an opportunity to boot up your machine with the disk operating system using the reset procedure rather than having to turn the machine off and on again. Don't do that. Also, you'll be learning a series of procedures and commands or instructions that you give the machine. And this is where the DOS, or disk operating system, comes in real handy. Some of the most important procedures and commands are called catalog, to let you see what's on the disk; copying, for copying entire disks and sometimes single programs or pieces of data; formatting, or initializing the diskettes to hold information. After a diskette has been initialized, it can become a data diskette. Save is the command used to save a program that's in the machine. And load is the command that brings a program or file from a diskette into the machine. Also, you'll learn the run command, and that causes a program to be loaded into the machine and go into action. The first command you will learn is called catalog. It's the command that lets you see what programs or files may already be on the disk, so you'll know what to ask for.
First, let's boot up the machine with the DOS diskette in the #1 drive. To do this, just press and hold the Open Apple key, the Control key, and the Reset key. Then let them all go. The machine will take care of the rest. What you're seeing on your monitor is Apple's Hello program. Notice how the machine told you it was loading integer basic into the memory? Well, that's just one of several kinds of basic or beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code. There is another form of BASIC called AppleSoft BASIC, and the difference between the two is simply that AppleSoft BASIC, which is built into the machine, has more features and uses decimal numbers. However, since these differences are more important for writing programs rather than running them, you won't have to concern yourself with that material. Notice also the Apple II signature at the top of the screen has now added some information and some instructions for you. It says to make sure that your caps lock key is down. This is because the machine only accepts commands written in uppercase. Get ready to give a first command, catalog. This is easy to do. Making sure the caps lock key is down, simply type in the command word, catalog. And press the return key. If there are more entries than will fit on the screen, as in this case, the display will stop. So just press the return key one more time, and you'll see the cursor again sitting next to the prompt after the entries are complete. You may have to press the return key several times with certain disks. The list is complete after you see the cursor sitting next to the prompt. If you want to see it again, just repeat the sequence by typing catalog and pressing the return keys until you see the cursor sitting next to the prompt. Did you notice how the screen moved when you typed in the catalog command and the information filled the screen? Well, that's called scrolling. The best explanation of scrolling I can think of is this. In ancient times, before the invention of the paper cutter and the copying machine, the written word was put on scrolls, like this one, except, of course, they were older. A long piece of parchment or paper-like material, sometimes with pieces of wood on the top or bottom. The scroll was rolled up, and you would have to roll it in both directions to move it up or down. Noisy, isn't it, for the printed word? Well, information sometimes rolls up and down your CRT just like that. So the smart folks who invented computers figured since it seemed like having a scroll in your computer, they would call it scrolling.
Let me explain that the columns in the catalog tell you several things. If you see an asterisk in the first catalog column, it means the program is protected from being erased or deleted. The next column has either an A, an I, a B, or sometimes a T in it. The I stands for integer basic, the A stands for AppleSoft basic, and the B stands for binary, meaning machine language. Those are the languages those specific programs are written in. The T that you sometimes see stands for text files, which are usually data, like, say, a phone list. Those numbers in the next column tell you the amount of space that's taken on the diskette to hold the program. The measurement refers to the number of blocks used to hold the material. You can figure each block has 128 bytes or characters. The last column is the name of the program. By the way, when you command the machine to use any of these programs, you must write in the program name exactly as it appears on the screen.
Now we will take a look at a program that will copy the entire diskette. And we want to copy the entire diskette immediately. You see, the floppy diskettes could also be called flimsy diskettes. Although the life expectancy of the average disk is about 40 hours of real use, accidents do happen. So it pays to make at least one backup copy of all your program and data diskettes. As a matter of fact, we recommend that you have at least 2 backup copies and store 1 copy in a safe place away from the computer. Like, say, in the safe deposit box at the bank or some fireproof container.
Now we're going to show you how to back up your program diskettes. After you learn how to make data diskettes, you'll be able to use this same process to make copies of them. Now, since your DOS diskette is already in the number 1 drive, I want you to take an unused or a blank diskette and put it up here in the number 2 drive. You'll use the same procedure as you did before. Don't forget to make sure that the label is up and out. That's right. Now gently slide it in the drive. Don't forget to close the little door, otherwise the drive won't operate. Good. Now, looking down the list of programs on the Disk Operating System Master is one called Copy A. Now here comes another command, run. That's the command to make a program go into action. Because you want to work in AppleSoft Basic, type in the command run copy A. And press the return key. Now the machine will give you 4 cues and then ask you 2 questions about direction and formatting.
You simply respond to the first 4 of those, which in this case says drive 1 default. For our purposes, default is your cue to just press the return key. You see, default really means that you're not going to amend or change the procedure in question. So when you default, you're leaving things the way they are. You tell the machine that just by pressing the return key.
This is what those 4 cues look like. Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, and here's 4. Now here's the first of those 2 questions. The first being, are you ready to copy? To answer that question, you just press the return key again. Now the copying or backup process will begin. And it takes a few minutes to be complete, so watch the screen and you'll see what's involved in copying or backing up a diskette. First, the machine must format or initialize the diskette. Then it actually begins to read the material from disk 1, the source, and then writes it onto disk 2, the receiver. This process can be done with one disk drive by removing your DOS system master
and replacing it with a blank diskette. Notice the material is being read and then written. Read from drive 1 and written onto drive 2. Here it's reading from the original slot. Now it's writing onto the duplicate slot or drive. Be patient. The process takes a few moments. When the copying process is complete, the machine will ask you the last question, which is, do you want to make another copy? Type in N for no and press the return key. Now the cursor is at the top of the screen.
Take the master DOS diskette out of drive 1 and put it away. Then take the backup DOS diskette from drive 2 and put it in drive 1. Do that right now.
When you've finished, type in the command word catalog. And press the return key. This will test out how good a backup you made. You should be seeing the same catalog you saw earlier. And if that's what you're seeing, congratulations. If not, well, just replace the DOS in drive 1, the duplicate disk in drive 2, and you can try the procedure again.
You've now learned that you can command your system to show you a diskette's programs simply by typing in catalog and then pressing the return key. You can load and run a program just by typing the word run, the program name, and then pressing the return key. Try that with the Hello program.
Type in the word run, the program name Hello, and press the return key.
Notice you got the same display on your monitor as you did when you booted up, except you didn't have to reboot. This is Apple's Hello program. When you put the CompuTutor program in, you're able to totally back up a diskette for safety purposes. Now you're going to see how to format or initialize a diskette. This prepares a blank diskette for use as a program or data diskette. Think of it as a filing cabinet filled with empty drawers and blank files, just waiting to be filled up with your files. Take another blank diskette and put it in drive 2. Now, don't panic, but you're going to write a little 3-line program that labels your data diskette. You'll be instructing your machine to note the person who made the disk and the date it was initialized. So you'll give the machine 3 lines of instructions. Programs, or the instructions you give your computer, must be numbered in the order in which the instruction will be carried out.
Don't forget, you can use the left and right arrow keys to move the cursor around in case you make a mistake. We'll show you. You made a mistake. No, I mean you misspelled mistake. You see, you just type over it, so the corrected version will remain. Oh, if there are any extra letters, just use the space bar to make them disappear. Very good.
Later in the program, we'll go into more detail about some of the command terms for program writing, but for now, just do as follows.
Type in the number 10, making sure you use the numbers 1 and 0 on the top line. Now a space, and the word print. Now type a quotation mark. And type in the sentence, "This Hello program created by."
and another quotation mark, and press the return key. Now, type in the number 20, a space, the word print, a quotation mark, and your name. A space, and the word on. Another space, and put the date in numerical fashion. For example, let's say today is April 1st, 1999. I know, we're thinking in terms of the future, 1999. You'd put in a number 4, a slash mark, the number 1, another slash mark, and the number 99. And finally, another quotation mark. Now press the return key. Now type in the number 30, a space, and the word end. And press the return key again. Now you're going to type in the command to initialize the hello program. This is done simply by typing in init hello, I-N-I-T, a space, and the word hello. By the way, if you're using a second disk drive, put in a comma, the letter D, and the number 2. Now, press the return key. The reason you numbered the statements of the program 10, 20, and 30 is to allow space between each instruction in case you wanted to add some additional direction later on. And later on in this program, we'll go into more detail about some of the command terms for program writing. Right now, your data diskette is being initialized.
Now, there is an easier way to do this. If you don't feel having the name of the person who formatted the disk and the date are important, you could ignore the 3-line program of instructions and type in the phrase init hello .
If you have a second disk drive, put in the comma, the letter D, and the disk drive number, which in this case is 2, and press the return key. Your diskette is being initialized and formatted. You'll know the job is done when you see another prompt with the cursor flashing next to it. Of course, you have to give it a few seconds. So, we will. I know it takes a little time. Now your diskette is formatted or initialized and ready to go.
Now that you've gotten to the point where you have a data diskette and a backup diskette, you have learned most of the commands that load and run programs. Just for fun, let's run a useful program and save the data. Once you've accomplished this, you can use the same technique for other programs. Take the copy of the DOS out of drive number 1. Don't forget, when you take diskettes out, always make a point of putting them back in the little envelope or shuck that they came in. Now replace it with the Apple sample software diskette that came with your machine. It looks just like your DOS and even has the DOS 3.3 header on it, but just below are the words Sample Programs. Now put it in disk drive 1. Don't forget to close the little door. Now type in the command catalog.
A comma, the letter D, and the number 1. Now press return. Don't forget to press return again until you see the cursor sitting next to the prompt. Good.
One last thought before we move on. When the machine directs you to give a command or add any information to a command, make sure you spell it and type it exactly as it appears. When you misspell a command or a phrase, the machine doesn't recognize it, so it's as though no real command has been given. Now let's try out what we've learned by running a program.
For our purposes, you can ignore the first 3 columns and go directly to the name column. Right in the middle of the screen, you'll see a program called Phone List. Press the return key one more time, and when the prompt reappears, type in Load Phone List. Press return. The program Phone List is now being loaded into the computer's memory. Although you won't exactly see it, what you'll see is the prompter and the cursor sitting next to each other. Now, type in the command word run and press return. You could have just typed in the command run phone list, because the command run will automatically load and start the program too. But you should know how to simply load a program or bring it from the disk into the computer's memory. What you are now looking at is a menu, like a restaurant menu that tells you what you have in the way of options. This program menu allows you to pick a command just by typing in a number. On Phone List, you have 7 command or options. 1. Searching for a listing, phone listing that is. Then there's 2. Listing the entire file, which is also used to list the file on your printer. We'll talk about that later on. 3. Enter new listings. 4. Delete a listing. 5. Edit or modify a listing. 6. Turning the printer on or off. And finally, 7. Exiting the program. Because there are no listings as yet, type in number 3, enter new listings, and press the return key. We'll add a few names. You notice how the cursor is ready for you to add a name, and the program tells you that the name can't be longer than 25 letters? So if you had a name like Quatfazo Tyrondolio Beltazerzinski, you'd have to abbreviate there. A little humor. Very little humor. None at all. Okay, fine. Go ahead and add your name. And press return. Now the program wants the phone number. And if you'll notice, it shows a group of X's in the appropriate format. The 3-digit area code, a space, the first 3 digits of the number, another space, and then the last 4 digits of the number. Well, type in your phone number just that way. And press return. Now the program is asking you if the information is correct. Now, if it is, you would type a Y for yes. If it isn't, you would type an N for no. In fact, type an N for no anyway, just to see what happens. Now press return. See? You have to start the whole process again. Go ahead. That way we can take a look and see what happens when you get it the way you want it. And press return. First, put in that Y and press return again. See? Now you're back at the main menu. Type in 3 and ask for another new listing, and this time enter a couple of friends' names and numbers. Use the same procedure as you did before. Now the number. Say it is correct by typing in a Y and pressing return. Let's just do one more. That's right. Now that we're back at the main menu, let's try something different. Type in the number 5 for edit or modify a listing and press the return key. When it asks you whose listing you want to edit or change, write in one of your friends' name. You see how the program asks you if you want to edit or modify the data? If you say yes, it will be like the correction process you went through before. So, answer no by typing in an N and pressing the return key. Now that you're at the main menu, type in a 1 and press return. The machine wants to know what kind of search method you want to use, the first name or the first letter of a name. Well, if your list is short enough, why not ask for just the first name, which is word or number 1. It'll be quicker. Now, enter the first name, anybody's first name, and press the return key. In fact, you should always remember to press return after each request. Look at the file on the screen now. If that's all you need to see, go ahead and press return. Good. All you have to do now is type in the number 2, press return, and the entire list will be presented on the screen. Press return again, and you're back at the main menu. You can exit the program now by pressing the number 7 and then pressing the return key. Good. Now that you've seen how a program can be loaded and run, let's assume you would like to take this program and make a copy of just it on another disk. Now you know why we prepared that data diskette. Here's how to do it. You'll be using a new command designed to allow you to save the program. It's appropriately enough called the save command. Let's try it out. If you have only one drive, remove the disk currently in the drive and replace it with your formatted or data diskette. What you'll do is to take the program phone list and put it on that formatted disk. Now we'll assume for the moment you have 2 disk drives. You want to take that program and save it on the diskette already in the second drive. So you type the following: save phone list. Comma, the letter D, and the number 2, and press return. You have given the command to save the program and the data you've added to it. You have added a single space and typed in the program's exact name, and then typed in a comma and the letter D and the number 2, which means drive 2. If you have only one drive, skip the comma and the D2 and press return. Do it now. I won't mind waiting for you, especially if you put the video machine on pause. Now, to make sure the program made it to the diskette, you'll ask for a catalog by typing in the catalog command and pressing return. If you have 2 disk drives, type in the catalog command, comma, D2, and press return. Do that right now. Notice that when you do, you'll see the program listed on the formatted disk. To move a program from one disk to another doesn't mean you have to load it up and run it through the computer first. If you happen to see a few programs on one diskette and you want to copy them over to another diskette, all you have to do is use the save command with the appropriate disk drive number. Something to keep in mind for 2 disk drive users. Until you tell the machine otherwise, disk drive 2 will become the prime drive. In a moment, I'll explain what the prime drive is. So when you want to find the catalog on disk drive 1, make sure you write in the command catalog, then put a comma, the letter D, followed by the number of the disk drive you now want to read, which is 1, and press return.
Save is a very important command. Along with load and run, also important is formatting with the command init or initialize, and using the copy or copy A program to back up or duplicate whole diskettes. There is one other critical command you must consider. What if you want to delete some program because, well, for one reason or another, it just turns you off? Easy to do. The same way you saved a program with the command save, you delete programs with the command delete. Clever, this computer terminology, isn't it? Now I want you to delete the phone list program you just saved on the initialized disk. If you have 2 disk drives, just type in delete, a space, the name of the program, which in this case is phone list, a comma, the letter D, and the disk drive number, which in this case is 2. Now press the return key. If you have only 1 disk drive, again skip the comma, the letter D, along with the disk drive number. Here's what you should see. All right now, don't forget, the way to inspect your work is to ask to see a catalog on the diskette you were working on. See if you understand the delete command by deleting the hello program from the diskette in drive number 2. Good. Now check for a catalog of drive 2. Very good. By the way, when you give the command to see the catalog, the machine always goes to what is called the prime drive. Of course, if you have only 1 disk drive, it is always the prime drive. But with 2 or more disk drives, the prime drive is always number 1 unless you change it. If you were to give a command intended for the second drive, you would write the command, say, catalog. A comma, the letter D, that stands for drive, and the number of the drive you were referring to, say drive number 2. Then press return. The machine will then display the material in drive 2, and until you change it back, drive 2 will become the prime drive. To keep drive 1 as the prime drive, make a point of typing in the catalog command followed by a comma, the letter D, and the number 1. Now press return. Drive 1 is now the prime drive. Well, you've worked your way through a disk operating system and even a useful program. You should run this segment again right now, only the next time you run it, don't delete the 2 programs, because we will be printing the phone list program in the next segment. Also, consult the owner's manual on pages 32 and 33 regarding the keyboard, and then check pages 58 through 65 on the disk operating system and commands. You can check those pages and run this segment several times before we move on. It's okay with me. After all, it beats waiting around in the box. I'm so lonely here. No one calls, except my mother, and then she only wants to know what time I'm going to be home, you know? Mom, I told you 4 segments ago I was going to be home late. I have to go, Mom. Welcome back to CompuTutor. Well, so far we've learned to assemble your Apple IIe and boot up with the DOS, or disk operating system, having been through the important commands and procedures such as
cataloging, or seeing what files are on the disk, copying a complete disk, saving files, loading a program, running a program, and deleting a program. We've even run a useful program.
Even though we've seen the option on the program menu that allows you to order up a printed version, we've yet to talk about your printer options. Let's do that now. The purpose of your printer is to make a written or hard copy version of the material you've put into your computer. Certain printers are more appropriate for certain jobs. Most of you probably bought a printer when you bought your computer, so you should know there are two kinds of printers, dot matrix and letter quality. Dot matrix is the most common. The little printing mechanism inside is a series of pins and usually prints 5 dots across and 7 dots down to make a character, or 9 dots across and 9 dots down to make a character. That series of pins makes a matrix of little dots on the paper, hence the name, dot matrix printer. When you use the print option of any program and the hard copy or printout begins, here's what happens. The printer takes the characters from the machine and then prints out the letters on paper in much the same way as lights in a stadium scoreboard show the scores. The more pins you have, the better looking the printout. The speed of most printers is measured by the number of characters, letters, numbers, and symbols that it can print in a second. The number of characters per second, or CPS, on a good dot matrix printer can be as many as 400 or as little as 30 CPS. Now that means you could fill a page of copy anywhere from 10 seconds to just over a minute. This makes the dot matrix very handy when you want to get a hard copy or printout on a program very quickly. You can buy a dot matrix printer that will handle average size paper of 8.5 by 11. That translates out to about 60 to 132 characters across the page. Of course, that depends on the size of the characters and the kind of program you're running. You can also buy a dot matrix printer with a carriage large enough to handle paper 15 inches wide with 132 characters or more across the page. Maybe you've seen some of those large printouts. Of course, the smaller the printer, the less it costs. And dot matrix printers are considerably less expensive than letter quality or daisy wheel printers. This daisy wheel or letter quality printer doesn't use the dot matrix formation. The characters are taken from a little wheel called a daisy wheel. Here, I'm going to open this guy up and show one to you. See? The printout you get from a daisy wheel printer looks like it was typed on a typewriter, just like any piece of office correspondence. That's where the expression letter quality comes from. However, the letter quality printer takes longer to fill the page because the speeds will vary only from 10 to 55 characters per second. Therefore, you may be trading off speed for quality and appearance. Now let's talk about loading paper into your printer. The most common is tractor feed. That looks like this. You notice these holes on the sides of the paper? Well, that's for the tractor system. Of course, you can easily pull these parts away from the page, like so, and like so, and then you have a standard sheet of paper. This is the system you're most likely to use with your dot matrix printer. Using this dot matrix printer, I'll give you an idea how the paper is loaded. By moving the paper through the back of your printer, it will catch on to the pins of the tractor feed device. Then, you can roll it through with the roller handle for the platen. When you load paper into the printer, whether it's continuous run or tractor feed, or single sheet as in friction feed, you should always make sure that the top of the sheet is at the top of the printer head. This is called top of the form, or TOF. That will ensure that each sheet of paper that follows will be set to the top. And if you ever get into using some pre-printed forms, it's one of the best ways to keep your place on the form. Another nice thing about using tractor feed paper is that you can buy it with as little as 500 sheets and as much as 2,000 sheets in a box. If you need paper with a letterhead, you can find companies or stationers who will make up this kind of paper with your letterhead on it. If blank paper will do the job for you, well, then you'll save money and time. With a letter quality printer, you will probably use the friction feed process. That just means that it loads like a typewriter. The paper is loaded into the daisy wheel just like a typewriter, and the tight friction from the platen or roller will hold it in place. Daisy wheel printers can also take tractor feed paper, but you must purchase a tractor feed device. You can also buy a sheet feeding device that will allow you to use a large quantity of your regular stationery. Let's go back to that phone list program from the last segment. We'll assume you need a printout for your records. Here's an example of how the dot matrix will handle the job. First, run the phone list program. Notice option number 6, printer on or off. Press number 6 and press the return key. Notice how the program tells you with the flashing light that the printer option is now on? Good. Now you're ready to press number 2, list the entire file, and the return key, and the printing process will begin. Now here's the same listing printed out on a letter quality printer. So, whether it's an important business report or just a friendly letter, you have the option of having it look almost any way you want. If you don't have a printer yet, then you should know that it's possible with the dot matrix to rearrange the typeface or font by adding some programmed instructions. Or if you decide to go the route of the daisy wheel, you can choose, in some cases, between as many as 40 different typefaces or fonts. Some folks like to have both printers, the dot matrix for fast printouts and graphics and charts, and the daisy wheel for correspondence and reports. After you've considered speed, noise, price, and quality, you should consider one other factor: interface. That's the piece of equipment that allows your computer to talk to your printer. You see, not all printers will interface or hook up with any computer. Now, if you don't already have a list of compatible printers, ask your dealer to give you one. While I'm on the subject of compatible printers, there are two kinds of printer interfaces, serial and parallel. The difference is speed. The serial printer, like a single-lane highway, takes only 1 bit of the byte or character at a time through the system. The parallel printer, like an 8-lane highway, carries 8 bits or a full byte or character through the line. Now, taking this a step further, the serial printer is a more standard hookup, whereas the parallel printer is a more unique hookup. Now, what that means to you is that you'll have to be very sure that the parallel printer and its patch cord is specifically intended for your computer and printer combination. The serial printer is more likely to hook up with any computer and printer combination. Whichever printer you have or are intending to add to your system, just make sure you get a cable or patch cord that will fit your machine in the locations we showed you on the back of your computer back in segment 2. Finally, make sure you read through the owner's manual that came with your printer, and be sure you understand how to set top of the form, or TOF. Most important, if you're not sure about your printer options, check with your local dealer, because different printers have different options. Getting the printed copy the way you want it is important, and you might find it helpful to check with more than one computer store. Also, check out a few good stationery stores to make sure you can get a good selection of tractor feed paper if you're buying a dot matrix printer. Now that we've covered setting up and booting up your computer, running a useful program with the disk operating system, and getting a hard copy version, we'll tie it all together with the important element of software in the next segment. You can review this segment right now, or if you like, deal yourself a little break time before we begin the final segment of CompuTutor.
What, gin again? All right, 10, 20, 24. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't.
Once again, I congratulate you. You've really been through the paces, learning just how simple it is to use your hardware and how to operate the software. Software is what your computer is all about. Just like your video cassette player would be of little value to you without any video cassettes to play, such is the case with your computer.
A little earlier on, back in segment 4, I told you we would talk at greater length about software and programs. Well, this is that time. It isn't necessary to know how to write programs to get value out of your computer. In fact, out of any given group of, say, 100 computer users, that's you, only 5 people will have any interest in writing programs. More than likely, you'll be using software or programs that have already been written and published to fulfill your needs. You should know there are virtually thousands of different software programs, from games to accounts receivable and accounts payable. However, the most commonly used and in-demand kinds of software are Calc, or the electronic spreadsheet, word processing, and database management. At some time or another, these are the 3 kinds of software you'll probably be looking to use on your Apple IIe. I'd like to tell you just a bit about them. Let's start with Calc. Calc is short for calculations and is an electronic worksheet. You would use this the same way you might use a sheet of columned paper for working out things like simple budgets or projected business costs. Maybe you just want to keep a record of your normal home expenses. If you didn't have a computer, you might go to a stationery store and buy one of these columned pads. Well, that's what a Calc program is, an electronic columned pad. Now, if you filled out one of these pads and then discovered that some of your figures had to be changed for any reason, you would have to start all over again and fill out a new sheet. With a Calc program in your computer, you just change whatever figure you need to change, and the computer fixes up the rest of the pad. Even though you can only see a few columns over and a few rows down the page, you can get over 63 columns across and 255 down, or more. You just have to imagine you're holding a magnifying glass over a columned page, highlighting the area you're working on. Well, when you look on the CRT, you're focusing on the part of the pad you really want to see. Financial professionals use these worksheets to prepare statements, budgets, compute ratios, and modify projections in seconds rather than hours and days. You can use the same program just as easily to figure out your monthly food budget, list your expenses, or project earnings and costs on a project. So much for Calc. Then there's database management, which sounds like a pretty impressive program. And when you consider what a simple program it can be to use, it is pretty impressive. I'll give you an example of what it is and how it works. Think of that filing cabinet you have at home or in the office. It's filled with drawers that are filled with labeled file folders that are filled with files. It takes up a lot of space. And if you accidentally put the wrong piece of paper in the wrong file folder and that in the wrong drawer, days, weeks, months could go by before you find what's missing. And what if you need information from several different files grouped together in a particular arrangement? More time and more work. What can a database management program do for you? I'll tell you. Suppose you have a collection of magazines and professional journals. However, your collection is spread out all over the house and all over the office. Suddenly, you're looking for an article on butterfly collecting that you read last summer. With your database management program, you will have listed all the magazines you got in that year. You've listed the month you received them, the table of contents, and where you put them all. You simply command the program to scan for the word butterfly, because you're not even sure what the title of the article was. The scan might even turn up some other articles on collecting that you'd missed or forgotten. Now here's another thought. Your Christmas card list, or file cards, or virtually anything you want to keep track of fits into a database management program. I must remember to send this. It's not that much trouble to keep the information in the computer. You could type it in a little at a time, or all at once. It doesn't really matter, because once it's in the program, it's in there to stay, and you can start using it immediately. Now, word processing is probably the most popular program for microcomputers because it allows you to turn your Apple IIe into an electric typewriter that does a whole lot more than any electric typewriter. You could write anything from a shopping list to the great American novel fast and cheap. You see, the word processing program uses a process called text editing. That just means that you can edit, delete, change format, move entire blocks of copy and correct it dozens of times. Search for a specific word or phrase and store it forever on disk. You can reshape it 150 times if you'd like, without putting 149 pieces of crumpled up paper in the wastebasket. In fact, waste is a word you will rarely use when you get a word processing program for your Apple IIe. And when you do get word processing, typing will never again be the same. Beyond these 3 programs are many more. In fact, there are well over 1,000 different kinds of computer programs that you can use to make your work go faster and your spare time last longer. To learn more about the kind of software that might fit your needs, just check in with your local computer or software store. Now that we've covered the more popular software programs, you'll find it helpful in understanding software if you have a hands-on idea of how it's written and how it works. There are many languages that are used for writing software. You've heard us talk about BASIC, Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code, so we're going to teach you how to write a very simple program in BASIC. Don't worry. There are only 4 lines in this program and few terms to learn. This little program is designed to convert your age from years to months. Now, here are some of the ground rules about BASIC programs. They're a series of instructions that tell the computer to do things in a certain order. So each line of instruction is numbered. That way, the computer will know what instruction is to be taken first, second, and third. Here is what the actual program looks like written in the BASIC language. Notice how the lines are numbered 10, 20, 30, and 40? Very often, programmers write programs numbered that way in case they want to add a line in between later for more instructions. The first line is an input statement. That's why it says input right after the number, because you're going to put in some information. In quotation marks is a message that will be put on your screen before you type in your input. You'll notice there's an extra space before you hit that last quotation mark. When you copy the program, make sure you put it in, because when you run the program, you'll need the space to have room for your answers. The statement asks you to enter your age in years and months. So if you're 25 years old and 6 months, you would type in the number 25, a comma, and the number 6. When we run this program in a few minutes, you'll see what we mean. The semicolon next to the last quotation mark tells the computer there's more information coming. The Y, followed by a comma, and the M are called variables. That just means that the values assigned to those letters can vary, just like people's ages can vary. The Y stands for years, and the M stands for months. The next line, number 20, looks like an algebraic equation, and essentially it is. X, the unknown, will be equal to Y, or years, multiplied by 12, the number of months in a year, plus M, or the number of leftover months. Notice we use an asterisk for the multiplication sign because that's the way the computer likes it. An X is just an X to a computer. However, when writing programs or doing mathematical computations, an asterisk is the multiplication sign. The next line, numbered 30, that's a print statement. That means it will print information on the screen. The first line, the input statement, will also print information on the screen, but it requires you to put in some information. The print statement doesn't require you to add anything. At the end of the print statement, which looks very much like the input statement, is a semicolon telling the machine there's more information to come, and X is that information. Don't forget to put in that extra blank space just before the last quotation mark. You're doing it for the same reason you did in the first line. Also, don't forget, we've already told the computer that regardless of what numbers are put in for your age in years and months, X will be equal to the number of years multiplied by 12, the number of months in a year, added to the number of leftover months before your next birthday. The last statement, numbered 40, just says end, and that means we're at the end of the program. We'll leave the program up on the screen so you can copy it over and try it out. Boot up your machine with the disk operating system. Because Integer Basic has been loaded into the machine, You don't need to load and run any programs. Go ahead and copy that program into your computer, remembering to press the return key after you've typed each line of instruction or program. Have you finished? If your version doesn't look like what's up here on the screen, then press the return key, type in the word new, and press the return key again. And you can try writing the program one more time, remembering to press the return key at the end of each line. You might also want to rewind your video cassette machine and look at this small part of the segment one more time. When you're ready, type in the word run and see what happens after you press the return key. You see, the machine asks you to put in your age in years and leftover months, leaving a comma between the number of years and months. Go ahead. Now, press the return key, and the machine tells you your age in months. Granted, it's a simple application of program writing, but this should give you an idea how programs can be written in a general nature and still be able to be made very specific to your needs. Converting your age in years to months is general. Your specific age is what is specific. By the way, next time you're at your computer store, you might ask your dealer what are the best of the microcomputer magazines for your computer. You don't have to understand all the articles in Byte or Personal Computing to appreciate the ads that help you keep up to date on the hard facts about software. A couple of quick hints to keep in mind when you're shopping for software. Make sure you can try it out on a version of your machine before you buy it. Most stores will allow you to do so. That's another good reason for checking in with the store you bought your Apple IIe at. And when you do find a piece of software that meets your needs, make sure you make a backup copy of it right away. And now a few final notes on CompuTutor. No single book or tutorial will ever meet all of your needs. And the best person to teach you about your computer and your software is you. Trial and error is still the best teacher. The intention of CompuTutor is to give you enough information to get your computer online and get you started. The more you run this program, the more you'll get out of it. After all, look at what you've accomplished in a relatively short period of time. You've learned to assemble your equipment, boot up your computer, load and operate the disk operating system, run and save programs, operate your printer, even write a piece of software. And your future is even brighter. As you continue to master new programs and new peripherals, you'll discover that your machine is merely a means to an end. It's a device that allows you to do the things you want and the things you do best. Make decisions based on having information readily available. In many ways, you are well beyond novice. And the next time you see a computer article in a magazine or newspaper, or hear people talking about their systems, you can participate from the experience of being a user. Not only does CompuTutor congratulate you, we graduate you. It's my luck, I got to share a dressing room with the Lawrence Welk of the Integrated Circuit over here. Just, you know what? Don't do that. I don't want you to do that anymore. I never liked that, and I'd like to go over your contract one more time, frankly. Some kind of graduation is there. Shouldn't there be a prom or something?